Here's some yak steak. Yak steak. Oh, cool.
So we got about 970 pounds, about 3 years old, which I kind of wonder because he's a little bit darker. So as they get older, they develop more myoglobin. That's what makes meat red, is myoglobin. Beef has more myoglobin than pork. All right, because pork's harvested about 5 to 6 months of age. Beef cattle about 16, 18 months of age. All right. And again, if you still don't believe me, well, what beef product we have out there that's pink? This is veal. Like eel. There you go. Veal. Yeah. So this side chain here, what we'll do with that a lot of times cut it up into stew meat, but we're losing money on stew meat. But if I change its name from stew meat to like shish kebab meat, I can charge $2 more a pound for it. See how that goes?
Ooh.
So, but we're not going to mess with that. We're going to throw that down here. Now, so we got our filet mignon. This is where I'm going to use my salt. So here, our backbone comes up here. These vertebrae are right in here. So these are the lumbar vertebrae. Notice how that vertebrae changes direction. Okay? And when he changes directions like that, now we start to call these guys sacral vertebrae. Now, what's really kind of cool, and you might want to come up here and look at this before I cut it up. Another indication that told me he was a little bit older. Notice how you cannot see in the sacral region here. You can't see the individual vertebrae. That's a surefire sign that he's old. Right? In younger animals, you can see each and individual section of vertebrae. But here you can see, as we say in the industry, he's fused up in here. That tells me he's a little bit older. Now, what does that mean age-wise? All right, just means they could be a little bit tough. Right? They develop more connective tissue. The muscle fibers get a little bit bigger as well. And it's the same phenomenon that happens to us. All right, I'm not going to do this because I don't know how far we are from a hospital. All right. But if I want to be mean and illustrate this, I'd say, okay, everybody bend over and touch your toes without bending your knees. And you see why I want to make sure we didn't do that, because I don't know where the nearest hospital is. 10 minutes down the road. So we could do that, but then we'd be in trouble there. But that's the same phenomenon. We're not as flexible as when we get older as when we are younger. It's kind of the same thing that's going on here as well. They develop more connective tissue. The connective tissue starts to cross-link. And so if you think of my fingers and muscle fiber, that connective tissue, if I took a string and wrapped around it, that's a younger animal. But if I took a chain link fence and wrapped around that muscle fiber, that's the older animal. Okay? That's why they get a little bit tough. Now, I don't think we'll have any issues with this guy as far as tenderness goes. But I'm going to come in here. I'm going to separate this short loin from the sirloin here. I'm going to go right here, about in the middle of this last vertebrae, last lumbar vertebrae. Why are you not? You are going right there. There we go. I just discovered something. So in the meats industry, we break cats. You'll always hear the guy say, damn heifers, they don't cut true. All right? And yaks, they don't cut true. The reason being, this short line here, I should not have hit that hip bone. But that hip bone comes back a little bit further. So just a physiological quirk that they have that other animals don't have, all right? Our regular beef cattle don't have. So that's kind of a unique thing to kind of note there, mental note, is they don't cut true. Bos indicus cats don't cut true either. They can be a little odd when you cut them up as well. All right, so let's take this sirloin out of here. So again, I'm going to take this hip bone off. And the reason why we take this bone off is because consumers nowadays, believe it or not, they don't want bones in their meat.
Wow.
And the reason being they don't want bones in their meat, and I've said this many a times, I've told this story many times, the reason why they don't want bones in their meat, it reminds them that this once was a living animal, and they don't want to think about one. Yeah, that's
What?
yeah, you can't make this stuff up, I'm telling you.
Well, how do you think we get the meat, though?
Which I find interesting because you put a plate of spare ribs or baby back ribs in front of them, and they're on that like a pack of dogs on a three-legged cat. You know, they're all over that. But stuff like this, they don't want that. I'm going to throw this down here in my leg so you can look at that hip bone or that sacral vertebrae later if you want to. I'm going to take this piece off here off. All right. This is sometimes referred to as a ball tip. Or if you go to a really cheap steakhouse, they'll call that a sirloin steak. It is technically a sirloin steak, but the bottom sirloin is going to be tough. All right? And so we're left with the sirloin. All right? And so I'm put him over here. I'm going to face this guy up.
Straight down cut, no angle.
No angle in, and just straight down cut. Now, I will do this because it's a little bit bigger than I thought, all right? Let me do this. See this cap right here? This is cool. I'm going to take this cap off. All right. The reason why I say it's cool,
You gonna put it on your head?
no, not going to put it on my head. But I say it's cool because you guys have had this and you probably haven't realized that you've had it before. How many of you love going to a Brazilian steakhouse? Yeah. And they bring these guys out on the big swords. And they're kind of wrapped around the sword like, so. They call it picanha. That's that guy right there. Okay? That's that guy right there. Not to be confused, because I've had this discussion with many a meat cutter over the years. Not to be confused with that California delicacy called the tri-tip. The tri-tip's a different location. They're totally different cuts. But this is your picanha, or in America, we call it a coulant. So now, the reason why I like to take that off, muscles like wood, has a grain to it, and the way I was cutting it, I was cutting with the grain. Now I can take that off and cut across the grain and make that guy even more tender because I cut across the grain, shortening up those muscle fibers and enhancing his tenderness. And so where you would see this cut at a Brazilian steakhouse is like that. And then that makes this guy a little bit more manageable. Easier with an even bigger knife.
Yeah.
So there's a couple ways. Let me show you a couple ways to do it. All right. So this would be a traditional sirloin steak. All right. But because beef cattle have gotten so big, so even off this guy that was 900 and some odd pounds, all right, that's still a big piece. You imagine off of a 1,600 pound beef animal, like that, all right? And so what we end up doing is cutting down the middle, making two halves, and making our sirloin steaks a little bit more manageable for our consumer. Because you got to realize, and I've had this discussion with a mentor of mine, and he's like, if they don't want that, just tell them to cut it in half at home. But the average consumer pushing a shopping cart in the grocery store looks at that as one serving size. It didn't dawn on them that all they got to do is what I did, is just cut it in half and create these smaller cuts. Now, what's interesting about this is these are some of these new beef cuts that we have out there. This is what they would call a sirloin fillet. And why they like that? Because you, the consumer, have indicated you like two things. You like round shapes in meat. I don't understand. Then you like the word fillet.
Makes them feel fancy.
Makes you feel fancy, yep. And see, now what I've done is created these guys. And I've got a smaller portion size. And some people are after that smaller portion size. And I've created more cuts. So this would have been one set. And so I got maybe 3 or 4 more of those. Look how I turned that one cut that I would have got 3 steaks out of and 3 times through the cash register and turned it into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 cuts going through the cash register. Smaller size, more in the wheelhouse of our average consumer.